And when they say, when the ambassador and special envoy talk about how every arms shipment leads us closer to famine and a failed state, do you not think that that same logic applies in Gaza? Just because it's you who are supplying the weapons, as opposed to whoever it is, the Iranians, the Emiratis, the Egyptians, whoever it is that's supplying the weapons in Sudan, doesn't the same thing apply?
About the situation in the Middle East. We continue to be concerned about the risk of escalation in the Middle East, something we have been working to mitigate and contain since the attacks of October 7th, and specifically about the threats made in recent days by Iran against the state of Israel and the Israeli people. You saw the president make clear yesterday that we stand in strong support of Israel's security against these threats. Secretary Blinken has been engaged in diplomacy over the past 24 hours through a series of calls to foreign counterparts, including Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, and Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan, to make clear that escalation is not in anyone's interest and that countries should urge Iran not to escalate. We have also engaged with European allies and partners over the past few days and urged them as well to send a clear message to Iran that escalation is not in Iran's interest, it's not in the region's interest, and it's not in the world's interest. Separately, the Secretary spoke yesterday to Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant to reiterate our strong support for Israel against these threats. On that call, the Secretary also emphasized the importance of Israel meeting the commitments that Prime Minister Netanyahu made to President Biden last week to improve the delivery of humanitarian assistance into Gaza and to put in place enhanced deconfliction and coordination measures. Our teams, including our special envoy for Middle East humanitarian issues, David Satterfield, have been meeting with Israeli, UN, and private relief organizations this week to push forward on all of those fronts. And while we have seen progress, it is critical that that initial progress continue and that it be sustained. And that is the message we have been delivering consistently to the government of Israel. And with that, Matt.
Right. Thanks, Matt. Just to logistically, the calls that you just mentioned with the Turk, the Chinese, and the Saudi foreign ministers were all today?
He talked to the Turkish foreign minister last night. He talked to Wang Yi this morning, and then early this morning, and then talked to the Saudi foreign minister later this morning.
Okay. Are there others planned as well?
I don't have any calls to announce, but we have been engaged in a series of contacts, not just at his level, but at other levels too, to talk to foreign counterparts to send this very clear message to Iran that they should not escalate this conflict.
All right. I didn't want to raise this with the previous two speakers because obviously the Sudan situation is a situation in and of itself. But so much of what they said very powerfully about the conflict in Sudan could also, or does also, apply to what's happening in Gaza. And when they say, when the ambassador and special envoy talk about how every arms shipment leads us closer to famine and a failed state, do you not think that that same logic applies in Gaza? Just because it's you who are supplying the weapons, as opposed to whoever it is, the Iranians, the Emiratis, the Egyptians, whoever it is that's supplying the weapons in Sudan, doesn't the same thing apply?
I would say that we are incredibly concerned about the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and that's why you've seen the United States government working to get more humanitarian assistance in. It's why we've been pushing the Israeli government so hard to let more humanitarian assistance in and to improve their deconfliction and coordination measures so there isn't such a loss of political life. And then on the political front, it's why we have been pushing with partners in the region to develop a plan for post-conflict governance in Gaza. So we don't see a failed state. So we don't see anarchy in Gaza. So we see a path forward for the Palestinian people's legitimate aspirations. That is very much the policy that we are trying to pursue and that we have been engaged in this administration from the president on down.
But is it correct then, though, that the administration believes that every arms shipment to Sudan leads us closer to famine and a failed state, that does not apply
You have a very different.
in Gaza.
You have a very.
I
you
get
have a
that,
very.
but
It is a very different situation in Sudan, where you have a brutal civil war, two warring parties trying to seize control of the government, and in Israel, where you have Israel responding to a terrorist attack against its people and trying to achieve a legitimate counterterrorism and military purpose. That does not change at all the severity of the humanitarian situation, which is why we have been working so hard to improve that humanitarian situation for the
so
people
you
in
don't
Gaza.
think that every arms shipment to Israel leads us closer to famine?
We have continued to support Israel's
Is that
right
correct?
to.
No,
we have-
it's-
let
I
me
don't know,
say.
it doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
They are
what you
different
say, but
conflicts, but
I know they are,
I would
but
say,
I'm
I would
just
say,
asking you, they made the point in Sudan.
and I'm answering
And I
that-
just want to know if you feel the same way about
they are
that.
very different conflicts, but the humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire, and that is why we are working so hard from the president on down to get more humanitarian assistance in, and it's why we were working to improve deconfliction and coordination so we don't see such a high number of civilian casualties as we have seen over the past 6 months.